is up, everybody, and welcome to the weekend edition of the All NBA Show mini pod with Mares and Stein. This is powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. We're going to get the latest on the Jimmy Butler fiasco, which I think is officially a fiasco. We're going to talk about the Pacers because I find them to be one of the most interesting teams, and they have a very interesting week coming up. But we're going to start talking All-Star votes. We got the first round of votes in. Marc Stein, you've been following this a long time. The early votes often tell the story. There's some surprising names on the list this year. I feel like it's a transition year in many ways.
Yeah, I normally don't get too hung up on voting returns, but it's been pretty interesting this season to see, LaMelo Ball, 2 voting returns in a row at the top of the guards in the East, and Jalen Brunson from the mighty Knicks, with the fan base they have, only 4th among East guards. That is definitely eye-opening. Anthony Edwards, we're now, again, 2 voting returns into this thing. And in the 2 voting returns, 17 and now 16 players with more votes than Anthony Edwards. That, to me, is stunning. But I actually also, on maybe the more positive side, look at your guy Jokic. I mean, he and Giannis they've separated themselves. They are the 2 leading vote getters. And I thought we were told that, big men are not supposed to be super popular. But, look where Jokic is. Look where LeBron is in the voting total. So, those are just some things that kind of jump out at me as eye-opening for sure. I mean, they don't mean everything. The fan vote is only something. Yeah, no, look, the fan vote is 50%, so the media gets 5% vote. The players themselves get a 25% vote, so LaMelo Ball is going to need some help to actually make the All-Star team. I don't know if he's going to get any support from the media. He's had great numbers when he's played, but Charlotte, obviously one of the worst teams in the East, and he's missed a bunch of time through injury. So I don't foresee LaMelo Ball actually becoming a starter. He's going to need major help from the players, his peers, to tack on to how popular he is with the fans. But look, these are eye-catching things that tell you about how the public is feeling. And, I wouldn't have predicted anything that we've already talked about, really.
So, because you're exactly right. They don't mean anything in terms of like who's, actually great or this or that, but it does tell you the fan connection to the league. Where are the fans connecting through? The Anthony Edwards part, I'm going to circle back to that. But Giannis, Jokic, and then Tatum. Tatum's not surprising, but those are the 3 guys to get over 2 million votes. Those are the only 3 so far with over 2 million. And I have a sneaky suspicion, Mark, and I'm so curious what you think. I think Jokic is popular. When he went on the finals run in 2023, everybody fell in love with him. He had a great run. He had all these highlights, all these big games. We know Giannis is popular, and I think Giannis has been well established for a while, but I have a sneaky suspicion that I think people think he doesn't do commercials, he doesn't do social media, he's not popular. Shockingly, I think he's actually popular, and this is some of the best evidence. He has the 2nd most votes of all NBA players.
Yeah. No, the numbers speak for themselves, and it's funny because, he ain't doing podcasts either. I would love to get the notification someday that he's sitting down with Adam Mares to chop it up, but I don't know that podcast summit is going to happen. So, he doesn't do interviews. He does a little bit on the commercial space, but he's not exactly campaigning for himself. But I think you're right. That finals run, that title run, and look, the Nuggets are coming to Dallas for a baseball series. I'm about to get back-to-back doses of Jokic in my hometown. Yeah. We've had some pretty bad weather here in Dallas this week, so I was not able to attend Blazers at Mavericks on Thursday night because the roads were pretty icy, and we don't handle snow well here like you guys do in the Rocky Mountains. But the weather should clear for Sunday, Tuesday, and it's some real playoff scheduling. Sunday afternoon tip-off. So it sucks that Luka Doncic has the calf injury, because in the Balkans, where these guys are from, this would have been a primetime Sunday night showdown, and we're not going to get it now. But Sunday afternoon and then a Tuesday late tip-off. So it's very reminiscent of playoff series scheduling. And Jokic is going to be parked in Dallas for these 2 games in a row, and I can't wait.
Well, another one that stands out to me, I kind of want to go by some of these big ones again as kind of a health barometer of the league and what people are seeing. Victor Wembanyama, I believe the seventh most votes, which is pretty high. He's fourth in forward voting, although he might catch LeBron. He's kind of close there. But again, Wemby's new. He hasn't been on the scene that much. He's in San Antonio, but already popular. And I think that's also meaningful that he's at this stage of his career and he's already one of the most popular players in the NBA, at least by this metric.
Yeah, I mean, Wemby's, he's going to be an all-star, and I think it wouldn't have even really mattered so much on the fan voting. I think the coaches are going to vote him in as a reserve. I don't think there's any question. San Antonio has basically been a 500 team. We thought that they would flirt with a playoff spot after adding Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes. I think they're even better than anticipated, and a lot of that is down to the fact that Wemby has taken a leap and is a nightly monster. My only complaint about Victor Wembanyama is I've only seen him in person 3 times, and none of those 3 times did I get these Wemby explosion game. Like, we just saw when he and Jokic, they had the it was a Spurs Nuggets baseball series.
Great
And
hoops.
back these 2 amazing games. And for some reason, selfishly, my luck when I'm going to see Wemby in person, I never tend to get that that Wemby box score when he might go for a triple-double with 10 blocks. I personally have not had the luxury of seeing one of those games, but they are becoming a more frequent occurrence, and he's just been a monster.
I have a feeling that won't last for long. I think there's going to be a lot of good Wemby versus Dallas matchups in the near future. LaMelo Ball is so fascinating to me. I mean, I like it. He's a great player. He's a fun player, fun personality. I never would have guessed he's as popular as he is. And I have a bunch of nephews and cousins, younger age. That's the guy they all love. They love LaMelo. And I don't know if this is the LeVar Ball, big baller brand. If it was just because of that, he kind of came up through the internet and that's where everybody kind of lives these days. But I'm a little shocked with how popular he is because I think that he's number 1 guard in the entire Eastern Conference, above Donovan Mitchell, Lillard, Brunson, Trae Young, all those guys, well above all of them. Is it known in league circles that this is actually one of the most popular players in the NBA? Yes, he's on Charlotte. He's still young, but that he's actually as popular as just about anyone in the league?
It really wasn't until this All-Star voting season, and it's been a huge talking point. But I have a personal rule that I have always applied when I talk about All-Star. If that's who the fans want to see, if he's got the vote total, that's what the fans want to see, and it's their game. The All-Star game is for the fans. Now, with the change in voting, this overwhelming support he's got in the public, that alone will not guarantee him an all-star spot. And as I already mentioned, with the coach vote, with the player vote and the media vote likely working against him, LaMelo Ball might not hold on to that all-star starter status. And it's hard to see the coaches voting for him again because of the Hornets record and because of the time that he's missed with injury. But yeah, I mean, again, that LaMelo Ball is this popular. It has been eye-opening, which really has been exemplified by these vote totals. But then beyond that, again, like the Anthony Edwards, where he has landed in the voting, has really stunned me because, I mean, the ant effect, the league has really embraced this ant on opening night after the Celtics played their ring night game. Minnesota, it was Timberwolves at Lakers. Anthony Edwards was featured on the TNT. There's only 2 games on opening night, and Anthony Edwards' team was on the card for that 2-game night. And then on Christmas, the Wolves were in Dallas for Christmas. And those 2 high-profile spots, those are really the, opening night and Christmas, those are the 2 foremost TV slots a team can have in the first half of the season. And because of Anthony Edwards, the Wolves were slotted into both of those schedules. And so for there not to be a correlation in the All-Star voting, it's definitely surprising.
Yeah, that is a really surprising one. I want to ask you, though, on the other side of this coin, you mentioned Jalen Brunson. He's a little bit further down the list, not quite 1 million votes behind Damian Lillard. Yet Karl Anthony Towns is almost at 2 million, one of the highest vote getters. And I feel like this is a sneaky, underrated story. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns is in many ways the face of the New York Knicks now. And I kind of knew that. You sensed it. He's been playing great. He's been phenomenal. But those voting returns almost also indicate this, just how popular he has become in New York. So that one stood out to me too.
And I would not have predicted that either. I mean, I felt like, the love in Gotham for Jalen Brunson to me seemed infinite. So those numbers certainly surprise. And, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I have the answer to explain it either. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have thought Jalen Brunson would have been a top 2 East guard because he's playing for this behemoth franchise in the largest media market. And the Knicks have been so good since, he is just every year in Dallas, he got better, but he's done the same thing as a Knick. He just keeps getting better. He finds another gear to go to. So, yeah, I did
Yeah.
not see that.
So one of the things Legs and I talked about this week that I'm very curious about, because I just love this Cavs team. I know you are very impressed by them, but they don't have the traditional, it's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and so on. They have a number 1 in Donovan Mitchell. I think he's a lock to be an all-star. But when you get past that, I think you could make any case for the next 3 guys, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland. I think you could make a case for all of them or any combo of them. And as I look at it, I think Mitchell, Tatum, Brown, Giannis, Karl Anthony Towns are locks. I think LaMelo's a lock just based on the voting. I mean, I just think he's going to be in one way or another, whether it's voting or off the bench. And then you've got, I think, Brunson, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham, and Trae Young. Those are the next. I think all of those guys make it. Like, I would feel pretty confident saying all the names on that list, which means you have 2 remaining spots for Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Tyler Hero, Halliburton, Siakam, Barrett, White, Drew, Maxey, and Lillard. That's a lot of guys for only 2 spots left. And I'm just kind of curious if you think like Damian Lillard, we just pencil him as an all-star. Is it possible he's a guy that's on the outside looking in? Halliburton started slow, but he's really coming along now. Like, of those names, Garland, Allen, Hero, Halliburton, Siakam, Barrett, White, Drew, Maxey, Lillard, do you have a guess for who you think ends up getting in?
Well, I would just say this. My 2 things, and look, you have a great long list. I have not yet done all my permutations on
It's
how
early.
I do not cast a media vote on the starters, but I will certainly weigh in on my Substack when we get closer to the announcement of the starters and the reserves. I think for one, Cade Cunningham has to be there because I feel like
Yep.
Detroit had 3 wins this time a year ago. They're a
That's right.
500. Like, Cade Cunningham has to be there. But the question you raised, it's not just us on the outside asking it. It's not just you and Legs as Cavs aficionados. The Cavs themselves, they were just in Dallas, and they've been chirping about how many All-Stars do you think we're going to get? I heard, Tim Bontemps from ESPN talking about it, that he just covered that Thunder Cavs classic on Wednesday night. And this is something that Cavs players are banging on about. Like, they want to know. They certainly feel like they deserve 3. And look at it, like Philly, because of all the injuries, Embiid and Paul George are not going to be in the All-Star mix because of the injuries they've had. Orlando, I think both Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner would be All-Stars if they were healthy, but they've both missed
Yeah,
a
they
ton of.
missed.
I tend to think that Cleveland is likely to get 3 just because 33-4 is so damn good. Like, that is not
Yeah.
just that's not just a good record. It is historic. I mean, that game the other night when it was OKC at Cleveland, it was only the second time in league history, that we had 2 teams that won 30 of their first 35 games.
Saw
And
that.
the only happened was 71-72 with the Lakers and Bucks. And of course, that was the year that the Lakers won 33 in a row en route to winning the championship. They had a 33-game winning streak during the regular season. I mean, Cleveland has been lights out, and the question is just going to be, how many?
Yeah.
Is it Donovan Mitchell's he's a lock.
That's a lock.
I think Mobley is going to be next in line.
Agreed.
And it really depends on Is there, who does it come down to? Jared Allen or Darius Garland? Like, it's unlikely that they get 4 because, you listed 20 worthy candidates, I think. I was, in the ballpark of 20.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but yeah, this will be over the next couple weeks, besides the trade deadline, this is going to be a pretty popular talking point, I suspect.
Well, I think the top line story is just that there's some surprises because I really do think the league is in a bit of a transition right now, and it's hard to predict exactly what direction. So some surprises: Wembenyama, Jokic so popular, Anthony Edwards not as popular as we would have expected. So that's what I think the story is. If we move on to Jimmy Butler, though, I think this is the third week in a row talking Jimmy Butler with you. In the last week since our last conversation, it was a fiasco last week, but in this week, Pat Riley's filled in some questions. He was asked if he lost his fastball. Maybe he has, he says. Jimmy Butler is throwing some subtle jabs. What's the latest here in how this situation is being handled by the Heat, but also with just the trade at large?
Well, look, the reality is there's just all signs are pointing to Miami bringing Jimmy Butler back. That
Wild.
suspension to end, and they have a home game, I believe, against your Denver Nuggets.
Is that the
And
return?
that is the return, I believe, on January 17th.
Okay.
And the question is, how is this reintegration to the team going to work out? This, the Heat have now won a couple on this 6-game Western Conference road trip, but, we know that Jimmy Butler would like to land with the Phoenix Suns, but there are 2 major obstacles to that trade. And Bradley Beal's no trade clause, that's the secondary obstacle. The main obstacle is the Miami Heat do not want Beal's contract. And there is no team that we know of on the NBA map that is willing to absorb Bradley Beal's contract. So there has to be a team willing to take him before we even get to the issue of Beal waiving or not waiving his no trade clause. And it just, with Bradley Beal owed $110 million over the next 2 seasons after this one, it's just not realistic that a trade partner is going to emerge. And look, we know Jimmy Butler wants to go to the Suns. He's got a great relationship with Kevin Durant. I saw that with my own eyes when they were Olympic teammates. They were very fond of each other. But we also know if Jimmy Butler could find a way to get to the Suns, Matt Ishbia is the kind of owner who we presume would be willing to furnish him with the contract extension that Miami does not want to give him. And it doesn't look like there's a functional way to get him to the Suns. And so the Heat are faced with this situation of, how do we bring Jimmy Butler back? And it's going to be, that will be cinema in itself, as the kids like to say these days. And again, we talked about this the last time, because remember, in this new NBA environment with a player participation policy, the Heat and Jimmy Butler cannot come to a mutual agreement and just say, wait at home, wait at your coffee shop till we find a trade for you. They can't do that under the new rules. The only way they can do it is if they ask the league for its blessing. Now, there is a clause in the player participation policy where the league can say, under rare and unusual circumstances, we will let you put Jimmy Butler on the shelf until a trade is found. But it's really hard to see the league blessing that under these circumstances. So
what's different about that and the PJ Tucker situation? Because he's the same thing. He gets to stay away.
Right. PJ Tucker is not a star player. The player participation policy was specifically written for, quote, star players. Star player is defined as having made the All-Star game or an All-NBA team within the past 3 seasons. And obviously Jimmy Butler falls under that criteria under both circumstances. He was most recently an All-Star in the 2021-22 season, most recently an NBA All-NBA selection after the 2022-23 season. So Jimmy Butler falls under the criteria of star player. PJ Tucker does not. And also the Clippers did that at the beginning of the season when, comparing how much PJ Tucker would play for the Clippers compared to the role that Jimmy Butler would have in Miami, it's just not an apples to comparison. So the Heat would need special dispensation from the league to put Jimmy Butler on the sideline until they can find a trade. And then what if there's no trade that happens on February 6th? Does Jimmy Butler just get to stay home for the rest of the season? So that's why the belief around the league is that the Heat are going to have to find a way to bring him back, because it just doesn't look like a trade's going to materialize here in the next week.
I can both see Jimmy Butler coming back. You said it was the 17th, coming back and becoming even more of a distraction. I mean, we know he loves to, he's comfortable in uncomfortable moments like that, making things uncomfortable. I could see that. And I could also see the Heat digging their heels in and make it, hey, we're not trading you. And I could see both of them just coming together and playing out the year. Is that a crazy thing if that's the way it plays out, where they both play this game of chicken past the trade deadline and then say, well, what are you going to do? We'll revisit this in the summer. Let's play ball.
It might have to be. The Heat do not just want to trade him for the sake of trading him. By just letting him walk, they would realize some immediate financial flexibility this summer. And they're definitely on course for financial flexibility in the summer of 2026. So now there is still that wild card of what is Jimmy Butler going to do with his $52 million player option for next season. Behind the scenes, he's been saying for months that he's going to decline it and go to free agency this summer. Could he reverse course and decide to opt in and take that $52 million? I mean, I guess anything possible, but I think the Heat would rather face that than making a trade where they have to bring back unappetizing contracts. They don't want to. They're not just going to trade Butler for the sake of trading him. And I do think that's where Miami will be pretty resolute here. They've definitely talked to teams. They've looked for a workable trade, but the options available to them to this point are not more appealing than just letting this thing go to the summer. And they know in the summer, only Brooklyn is projected to have cap space. We continue to hear that the Nets are not going to pursue Jimmy Butler in free agency. So what the Heat are banking on is that if Jimmy Butler wants to go in the summer, he's going to need their help to do so via sign and trade.
Well, I have a feeling we're all going to be annoyed by the Jimmy Butler saga, because there's a chance that this stretches not only past the trade deadline, but it stretches into the offseason, and then there's a whole new game of chicken to be played about how that gets handled. So I have a feeling we're going to grow tired of this one at some point. But for the moment, it's obviously a big story, and we'll see how it plays out in the next couple of weeks. Quickly, before we get you out of here, this time last year, the Indiana Pacers were off of their in-season tournament championship loss, and then they went into a rut afterwards. This year's almost been the exact opposite. They weren't playing great ball until the tournament happened. Of course, happened without them. But since then, they are 10-3. They've gotten their stuff together. And Halliburton is averaging 20-10 since the in-season tournament. He's shooting 41% from three on 10 threes a game. He's kind of figured it out. And now they have an interesting week ahead. They've got the Cavs twice, Detroit, Philly, and Atlanta all coming up in the next 10 days. Why is that interesting? All those teams are jumbled up in the standings with each other. The Pacers, we expected to be one of those top 6 teams. Just when we laid out, you look at the talent, you say who's going to be where. We expected them to be at the top of this list, but it hasn't worked out that way. But I look at it now and say they're playing good basketball, and if they have a good week here coming up, a good week against those teams, they might find themselves exactly where we predicted they would be coming into the year. And I kind of think it's going to happen, because I think they have figured out who they are, and they're playing the way they know they need to play.
Well, the good news for them is that, outside the top tier of the East, there is a lot of ordinary in that. There's just a lot of teams in the 500 zone. So Indiana's slow start, it didn't hurt them as badly as you might have anticipated, because we knew that the bottom of the East was going to be pretty weak this season. But I did think the top 6, 7, 8 in the East would be good, would be better, would be stronger than we saw last season. Obviously, Orlando has done incredibly well to stay in the top 4 with all their injury issues. I mean, in most years, Jamal Mosley would be a leading candidate for Coach of the Year with the work he's done in the face of all the injuries that the Magic have had to cope with. But because of what we're seeing out of Cleveland, I do think Kenny Atkinson is still the
Locked it up.
clear the year favorite. But beyond Cleveland, Boston, like it has kept things open for Indiana to rally. And look, you said it. Halliburton has rebounded really well from a really rough start. I mean, his start was, that was alarming, flat out alarming for the Pacers. And Halliburton has put it together. I think a big reason why is because Nebhard has proven to be such a great complement to him in the backcourt. They have really formed a wonderful partnership that has enhanced Halliburton's game. Nebhard's enabled it. We know what he can do defensively, but he's been able to play on the ball, and that has freed Halliburton up some. And it's funny, we've had 3 trades already this season, and all the talk, all the focus has been on the 2 that Brooklyn made, sending Dennis Schroeder to the Warriors, sending Dorian Smith to the Lakers. But that Thomas Bryant move that Indiana has made has quietly been very good for them. Thomas Bryant has formed a good center partnership with Miles Turner, and that has helped. And also Siakam, a year on from the Siakam move, Siakam is quietly playing very well for the Pacers. We just don't pay, even after everything Indiana did last season with the NBA Cup run and the run of the conference finals, the Pacers still fly under the radar, and we haven't paid much attention to. We're coming up on a year now that the Siakam trade was mid-January last year, and so we're coming up on a year now of Siakam as a Pacer, and he's looked very comfortable and very impactful. So they've got a lot of good things going for themselves right now. And again, the fact that the East has stayed so wide open outside of the powerhouses has really helped.
Every year there's one team that starts slow, and we all think, is something wrong? And then they bounce back. I thought it was going to be Philly this year because they started so horrible, and you just thought, well, it's injuries. They got healthy, but it looks like Indiana might be the team that is right where we think they should have been, even though it's been a bumpy ride. Well, he is Marc Stein. You can follow him on the Steinline Substack. You can also catch him post-game on the DLLS Maverick show. Marc, thanks for taking time out of your weekend.
Sounds good. We'll catch up soon.